Hello there and welcome to Talk Story to Me. Today we're going to be discussing Crimson Peak, and since I have a really tight afternoon with lots of work and, well, actually evening, I have to get this all done in one take and hopefully nothing goes wrong with it. So most of the time I do more than one. I usually do 4 and pick the best one, but we're just going to have to wing it for this one. So, alright. Well, first up, my husband and I got the opportunity to see this movie earlier than what we thought, and it was our first time getting to go out on a date for a little while, picking a movie that we actually wanted to see. And we had a great time, though I will tell you, this is not this is not a romantic date night movie any more than it is a terrifying horror story to keep you awake at night. It's somewhere in there. Now, I will tell you, there's a romance. There's romance in there, and one of the questions is going to be, whose romance is it? But anyway, we enjoyed it. We had a great time. It's a great movie to watch, even more fun to talk about afterward. And my husband and I got to sit in the ride home, discussing and dissecting it, which I absolutely love. Now, the movie, advertising for the movie, I will tell you, if you have not seen it yet, the advertising is really off on this movie. I had 3 or 4 different ideas of what the movie was going to be before we went to see it, just based on the previews. It wasn't that story at all. I was a little disappointed in that because I had some really exciting ideas of what I was hoping to see on the screen. But this story that is told and presented is well done. Now, first, we'll get into all of that later. First, let's hit the biases. I really like Gothic stories, particularly a lot of the European, English, and the romantic Gothic novels. Not necessarily romance, but there are a lot of really good ones out there. I like the issues that you can dig into, sort of the rawness and the setting, the imagery, and the atmosphere. So that definitely helped me to connect with this movie. The other thing that connected me to this movie, the main character is a writer. Now, that did pull me out a few times, and I will hit on that later. But there were also specific scenes that really made me connect, that got my heart involved. My husband and I, our first date was a ball, and so I absolutely know you can fall in love on the dance floor to a waltz. Absolutely. Well, it wasn't exactly the waltz, but it was very romantic. So, obviously the movie has a number of aspects that already make it appeal to me. Now, first thing to comment on, atmosphere and setting. Oh my goodness. It was so beautiful. It was made with so much care, and it was a work of art in that regard. Even if the story had been abysmal and the acting had been terrible, I would still buy and watch the movie again just to keep looking at the visuals and to try to dig deeper. Because one of the things I discovered when I watched Pan's Labyrinth, which is one of my favorite movies, was that the sets often reflected additional concepts. And sure, sometimes the symbolism is obvious. It didn't throw me out of the story, and so I'm fine with that. But one of my favorites in Pan's Labyrinth was the fact that the stepfather's workspace was structured to resemble the inner workings of the pocket watch that he had. And if you've seen the movie, you know how important that was to him, and yet also what it symbolizes. So I enjoyed that. It's quite artistic. The house, Crimson Peak itself. I've seen a number of people saying, hey, what actor would have to seduce you to convince you to stay in the house? Well, apparently I'm easy. There doesn't have to be any actor to convince me to go into that house. I find architecture fascinating. I like ruins. I like unusual places, spooky places, scary places. I was already picking out, I want to write in that spot, and yes, right there under that staircase, and yes, this would be perfect. So, beautiful, even though it's scary at points, which is perfect. That house I would love to go visit a place like that. I will also add, though, that house can kill you without any supernatural elements or evil siblings out there trying to end your life. There's so much exposure to the elements. You would die naturally from exposure, unfortunately. So, other thing that I quite enjoyed in this, it is a slower paced movie, I will tell you that. Don't go in there expecting it to be, action, 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 action. It's very much in line with the Gothic novels. In fact, I quite enjoyed looking for all of the allusions. I think I caught references to The Mystery of Udolpho, The Monk, Confessions of a Justified Sinner, Jane Eyre, obviously, I think that's a pretty clear one, and Dracula, Frankenstein, The Modern Prometheus, and a bunch of others, possibly some Wuthering Heights. I'm not sure, it's been a while since I've read that one and I can't remember as much about it. But there were also a number of old movie allusions, such as the frequent use of the collapsing perspective, and I enjoyed those. To me, it felt like it was just folding in a number of sources that provided inspiration without ripping them off. And sometimes I wonder what's the distinction between homage and rip-off. I don't have an answer yet. I sometimes think it's the skill with which it's done. Now, the plot itself is very simple. I was actually, in fairness, I was hoping for some more twists. I was hoping for the supernatural element, but it is summed up best as it is just a story in which there are ghosts. The ghosts do play a role. Some people say you could cut them out and you wouldn't lose anything. Yes and no. They are used. They do have a point. And they're also atmospheric. They're interesting, and they are unnerving. I think if you were to actually see these in your house, you'd probably be concerned. But the plot itself is quite simple. Yeah, it's one that we've seen before, and I did guess just about everything, including the big twist at the end. And on the one hand, that makes me sad, because I love being surprised. However, I've also concluded it's very difficult to come... If you read a lot of stories and watch a lot of movies, it's difficult to find something that hasn't been done. So the question becomes, was it done well? And not whether... Do I like the elements that are being used? Do I like how it was taken? I mean, those are legitimate sources for opinion, but I think in this case, despite the fact that the plot is simple, it's handled well. You do have to accept certain things, and there is one big weakness, and I will get to that shortly. Now, the characters. Yes, you're going to go out remembering some characters in this. Tom Hiddleston and Jessica Chastain as... Thomas Sharpe and Lucille Sharpe, they did a fantastic job. Jessica Chastain in particular, she reminded me of Lucy from Dracula. Even some of her her attire, her mannerisms, the certain behavior types. Well, no, I can't. I won't say that. You're going to take that down a particular track most likely, and it's not that one. But I thought that was interesting, and I enjoyed it. She's terrifying in the character that she plays, very cold, menacing, and yet at the same time, when everything is revealed, you still become, at least I should say, I became sympathetic to her. I felt bad for her. She wasn't a good person by any means, but you could understand how she got to the point that she did, and this desperation that clings to her now. And Tom Hiddleston as Thomas Sharpe, he did a very good job. Again, I don't want to spoil anything with that, but very good acting from him as well, particularly with the I can't spoil this, and it's so hard. It was good. You need to see that. He was quite interesting, manages to almost send you on some incorrect assumptions, but the one thing that I really appreciated in both of their performances, and particularly Tom Hiddleston's, was the ability to convey emotion, not always with words. The body language, the facial tics, the subtle expressions, all of that are all telling part of the story, and I love watching movies where the actors disappear into the roles. You don't remember them. I mean, there was there was that point when Tom Hiddleston first walks in, and there was a couple behind us say, "Oh, look, Loki just came in from A Christmas Carol." Like, but you forget that. Yeah, we were actually watching this with a very vocal theater at 2:00 in the afternoon. It was quite interesting hearing their commentary. But then that brings me to actually one of the weaker components, and that was actually the main character. Now, Mia Wasikowska, or Wasikowska, I apologize for mispronouncing the name. I've heard it multiple ways, so I'm not sure which way is correct. Anyway, I think she did the best job that she could with the character as given. But the problem, well, the character just doesn't, Edith just doesn't react to things. Like, there's a scene where there's a ghost crawling out of the floor, and she goes, "Ah, ah," and then she backs away. And at one point she's running screaming for Thomas and Lucille. But most revelations seem to get the same response from her. Now, and the other thing, and this is where I both connected, there's a scene, I absolutely love it, when she is talking to Thomas, and he asks her, "Oh, so is this character going to live?" And she says, "Oh, I don't know, it's up to him." And, he, of course, is confused by this, and he asks her further questions, and she explains to him that characters make their own choices, and writers just, we capture the story. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly, oh my goodness, we sound crazy. And we had, I was, James, of course, my husband, he's like, yeah, I was like, you do sound a little bit crazy sometimes, but he still loves me. And I wanted to see more of her as a writer, primarily because I don't know many boring writers. There is a certain insanity that comes with the territory, a particular oddness, and she was a very frail writer. Now, and this is where I'm torn, because I'm not sure whether, is this a shortcoming of the story, or is this just something that I didn't agree with? Because on the one hand, they sort of established that she's clearly not really that aggressive. She's a writer, and she likes doing it, and she's written a novel. But I wanted to see more life from this character, and I felt like Edith was more of how people think a writer, a woman writer, should be, rather than what she was. And in many respects, she was pretty passive as a writer. There's 2 scenes. These aren't any serious spoilers, so they're just minor. There's one scene where Tom Hiddleston is supposed to break her heart, and he doesn't do it the way that you first think he's going to. No, he starts attacking her as a person, as a writer, and her book. And she just looks at him as he is verbally shredding her and telling all the worst things that a writer would want to hear. And you just, she's just kind of, I can't tear up. See, that's why I'm not an actress. But, she's so crestfallen, and she's just breaking down. I'm thinking, if anyone ever talked to me about my writing like that, because this is not the disrespectful, this is not an angry review, this was total evisceration of everything. I think my response would probably be more like this.
Puny God.
Okay, that might be a little bit violent, but it's what I would be feeling as a writer. And, but I could also understand maybe she's just a little on the shy and the quiet side, because she is definitely frailer, which is why her conclusion as a character is quite interesting. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you should respond the way that I do, but I would not enjoy that at all. The other part is that as toward the end, Jessica Chastain has her novel in hand, and she's just picking up a page and throwing it in the fire. She is burning this woman's only manuscript. Oh my goodness. And I'm thinking, I don't care how close to death I am, you would get some sort of a reaction out of me. And I'm also feeling a little bit guilty because, yeah, they've killed other people, they've done terrible things. I think, she's burning the manuscript! She's burning the manuscript! No! So, yeah, and Edith just, she's so passive, and then she turns around and finds the will in her to fight. I'm glad she found the will to fight, but to me, I think it would have been so much better if she'd been a more engaged writer. You know, it could have added to the suspense and the development, and if she had been curious in ways that didn't just move the plot forward. So, I don't think I fault the acting on this. I think it's more of the writing of the character, where this character falls a little bit short and unfortunately becomes very forgettable. However, I don't think the others were, oh, well, no, we don't have time for that one. So, there are some holes in this story. For instance, and you know, some of these are just parts of the Gothic genre. Ghosts are incredibly unhelpful. I don't know if you noticed it, but they give the vaguest. They give the absolute vaguest of warnings. The one ghost comes in and is like, beware of crimson pink. Nothing is actually called Crimson Peak. You find out later it's a nickname, and I'm thinking, ghosts, please do better. And you would think that they would, but no. Now, there are a lot of... The one thing that does pull me back from saying that there are necessarily plot holes, there was so much care in so many details, and there were things that I noticed that other people had missed, and that other people had noticed that I had missed, that I actually wonder, is it so much that they're plot holes, or that I just didn't catch it? For instance, I was realizing why did only some ghosts show up? What was going on behind that? And then remembering, oh yeah, there was that line that certain kinds of deaths create certain types of ghosts. Not every ghost can come back, and they're outside of time. There were, it's not necessarily the easiest to follow, but by the same token, enough is given that you can argue that it's not a plot hole. And in other aspects, there is another character who tries to come into the rescue, and he's an idiot. Total idiot. Doesn't have a gun, doesn't have a knife. I will give you a word of advice. If you must single-handedly march on a crumbling old house to confront two evil people and rescue the fair damsel, make sure that you have something, preferably a dagger, a gun, maybe a pointy stick, to help you fight them off. Just putting that out there. But at the same time, that was obviously, there was also a nod to the Gothic novel and a lot of the tropes. There was one, I just have to say, yeah, this is another one of those novels where you can tell who's good and bad by their hair color. Now, everyone in this is pretty much white, so light skin is a given. But the good people have light hair, the bad people have dark hair. That's right. And there were a number of other tropes like that. Granted, that may be paying homage to the genre. It's just funny when you're saying, like, oh. Because in many respects, yeah, there is some gender flipping, there is some playing with the expectations, which is nice. And all in all, a lot of it comes down to nitpicks. At the end of the day, it's, I'm sure that the message isn't don't trust people with dark hair and light skin. You might get that impression. But all in all, it's a well done movie. I enjoyed it. I'll definitely be buying it, and I'll be watching it again. And I think I'll enjoy it even more the second time, now that I know what to expect. And there's so much more I'd love to break down and discuss. And so if you've watched it and want to talk about it, feel free to let me know your thoughts. And yeah, wait. Don't trust people with dark hair and light skin. Well, you've been warned. See you later. Bye.